Quick note right before we start. I want to shout out the listener who gave us 5 stars and also complained about how we pronounce the word Nevada. That is the perfect review. Criticize Ryan over pronunciation or
How did I pronounce
complaint.
it? How did I pronounce it?
I don't know. I
Nevada?
didn't listen. Nevada?
Is it
Whatever.
Nevada?
Sure.
I'm from Boston.
My favorite kind of reviews, 5 stars with some criticism toward Ryan. That's how you get it done. Thank you.
Nevada?
Let's start the show.
If the gooner is the defining pervert archetype of the 2020s, what does that say about our society right now?
Some not very good things. I would say it says that we are in a society that is extremely overly indulgent in our use of technology, very much about stimulation rather than any other type of meaning or even pleasure.
Okay, so I make this joke a lot where like a guest will cue us up for where we're going next, but literally, this is true. In our outline, the next line that Grant wanted me to read was, "It's pretty bad out there, huh?" When it comes to dating, here's what the internet has led me to believe. Gen Z are sexless little puritans who burst into flames if anyone tries to talk to them, not on Twitch. Millennials are so preoccupied with complaining about how they're doomed that they're basically doomed to never be happy with anyone. And boomers, in a final act of selfishness, are going to destroy the planet while they go to swingers parties. Today, we're talking about a panic that I think we all kind of feel is right. And I'm curious if by the end of the episode, we will continue to think that, which is that dating is bad. Technology is making it worse while promising us it's making it better. I'm Ryan Broderick. With me also is our lovely producer, Grant Irving. Welcome to Panic World, a show about the moral panics and viral freakouts bubbling up out of the darkest corners of the internet. And joining us today is writer, sexual culture critic, former Garbage Day Live guest, Magdalene Taylor. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to set us up on the same page before we get any deeper into this. Do you think technology has made dating worse? Just very simply, like before we get into what, okay, yes.
Well, particularly if we look at like data on sexlessness, it isn't a uniquely Gen Z problem. Every generation that's alive right now is having less sex than they would have like 20 years ago. And that's also true regardless of your orientation, regardless of income level. Everybody is having less sex. And I think that it's a particularly bad problem for Gen Z at the moment, as we have these expectations of finding a partner and getting married and having these traditional markers of growing up, and that's why it seems like it's a particularly bad problem for them, because they are being limited from doing those things. But the loneliness and isolation that Gen Z is experiencing is not entirely unique to them, and I think certainly has rippling effects for everybody, even if you are somebody, regardless of your age, who is partnered up and has friends and, doesn't personally experience this kind of loneliness and isolation. I don't want to live in a culture that is largely sad and lonely, even if that's not the feeling that I'm having myself.
That's fascinating, though. I didn't realize that it was across the board the same for everyone. I mean, not me, obviously, but everyone else. That's interesting. Because I feel like that speaks to the argument that it is the phones that is doing this, because like it is not just a Gen Z problem. Everyone, I guess, other than like meth addicted boomers down in Florida, are like not having sex anymore.
Well, I mean, even like married couples who live together, they are individually spending more time alone than they would have previously, and it's like, what the hell are you doing? You're scrolling on Instagram Reels or something.
I'm a morbid lurker on the dead bedroom subreddit. And amid the TikTok ban, the amount of men on the dead bedroom subreddit being like, maybe my wife will finally talk to me again once TikTok is banned.
That's so sad.
It's just the grimmest thing in the world. And obviously like that's probably not what's happening, but it is fascinating that like that has become like the way that people are articulating this.
Yeah. Yeah, completely.
I think the bedrooms are dead because it's a Redditor that's married, but
That's definitely part of it.
that's definitely part of it. You're married to a Redditor, so.
The rates of loneliness and sexlessness are particularly bad for Gen Z, and like young men under 30 are the highest demographic of single people and the highest demographic of people who haven't had sex in the last year. However, we can still mark a decline across all demographics.
And for more on how this would affect our society and politics, just check out the fantastic film Children of Men. That really fills in the blanks of where this is all headed. And what would you say is sort of the worst thing that technology has done to our sex lives, our romantic lives?
I think it has made people incapable of meeting in real life through more organic methods.
And do you feel like that is a superior way to meet somebody?
I do tend to think it's a superior way culturally for us to meet. I don't think there's anything wrong with meeting somebody online. It's not as though relationships that began on the internet are somehow inferior. But I do think that it has changed what expectations we have for ourselves in dating and has perpetuated a real disconnect amongst each other.
So you wrote in the New York Times last year a really sort of, I think, just like great kind of summary about what we'll be digging into today. So you wrote, is this uncomfortable that I'm going to read your own writing back to you? Is that strange?
Nah, it's fine.
Okay, good. So you wrote, the golden age of dating apps is over, a friend told me at a bar. As we waited for our drinks, she and another friend swiped through Bumble and Hinge. Across the bar were two young men, phones out, apps open, clearly doing the exact same thing. Never did the duos meet. Since 2019, 3 in 10 U.S. adults have reported using them, dating apps, with that figure rising to roughly 6 in 10 Americans under 50 who have never been married. Not only are people not meeting partners in bars or any of the once normal in-person venues, they're barely meeting them on the apps either. So why aren't the apps working anymore? Did they ever work, do you think?
There, as I say in the piece, maybe a little bit of a golden era where I think it's that the algorithms that the apps utilized was a little flatter, a little more. Here is the pool of people in your community who are also on this app. I think, like, especially with early Tinder, for example, there was just a sense that, like, okay, Tinder is exposing me to all of the people in my community who are also on this app. And in recent years, these algorithms have gotten a lot smarter, a lot more expansive, and how you navigate them is a lot more, I think, confusing and abstract to people. I think men deal with this a lot more. There's really not a great way for men to, I don't know, curate any sort of experience on the app other than swiping right on everybody. Otherwise, they will not receive any matches at all. Whereas women are often completely bombarded with matches, and it becomes impossible to sort through them in any meaningful way. What's really worse about all of it now is that this has become the way that people meet, to where we've lost the ability to meet any other way.
So I think what you're sort of describing is kind of like this end of like the millennial lifestyle subsidy where, like Uber, Tinder launches, it works fairly well for what people want to use it for, kind of, and then it just gets proceedingly worse. Is that sort of like your take on it?
To bring it to this millennial lifestyle subsidy phenomenon, I think a lot of people feel as though the only way that these apps will work for them is if they pay for them. Whereas previously, you could get pretty far on Tinder for free.
So we're going to get to that. Don't worry, people listening. We will address how capitalism has ruined our lives. But before we get there, I want to read a little bit more from your New York Times piece. So you continued writing, perhaps dating apps once seemed too good to be true because they were. We never should have been exposed to what the apps originally provided. The sense that the dating pool is some unlimited, ever-increasing in quality well of people. Do you have like a sense of when that mentality set in? Because I do agree with you that it is a fairly new phenomenon, but I'm always sort of curious on like, when do you think it flipped?
Yeah, I am somebody who like traces most of our social cultural problems back to 2013 or so when smartphones became ubiquitous. But I do think that most people mark the decline of dating apps to be, a real 2020 pandemic phenomenon.
Interesting.
I don't have a hard date in mind of when it became this bad, but I do have to imagine that, when dating app usage increased during the pandemic, that this is when people became a lot more accustomed to what they allowed for.
So this idea that like you can always just find someone new by opening up the app.
Right. I mean, especially during the pandemic, if you're, perhaps not even interested in immediately meeting somebody, you're a lot less likely to just say, hey, okay, let's go on a first date right now. It's lockdown or something. What else is there to do but swipe and swipe until you find like what you imagine to be the perfect person for you to go out with?
I think we can all kind of agree that a lot of these apps are set up to incentivize, time on site is the metric that a lot of these companies use. And dating apps are no different. They want you to keep using it, even if their marketing is telling you that we're the last dating app you'll ever use. Like they do want you to use it to go on your last date, so to speak. What I think is really fascinating about, let's say, that moment after 2013, culminating sometime around 2020, where dating apps have sort of replaced everything before them. We also start to see the rise of dating as content in a way that I think is fundamentally different. And I have 3 posts to show you. And I would love for you to kind of describe them one by one for our listening audience here.
I don't know how to make this too dramatic. It's already pretty bleak. Ending a situationship is all fun and games until you unintentionally listen to a song that they introduced you to. All right. That's sad for you. All right, the second one. Fresh out of a situationship, who wants to manipulate me next? Great. And the third and final. So it says, me and my situationship the night before we went no contact forever. And it's a clip of a couple being, so head over heels in love. They're kissing on the subway. They're practically like Lady and the Tramp, like sharing a piece of spaghetti. They're super lovey-dovey in a way that you would not expect for people who ghost each other later that night. Yeah.
What I think is interesting about these 3 posts is that, the millennial coming of age story is very tied to this idea of like the mass panic around hookup culture, perhaps a future episode for this show. And weirdly enough, like as dating apps take root, hookup culture starts to evolve into now what we would call like the situationship. These like very sticky, boundaryless or like over boundaried relationships that like agonizingly go on forever that to me feel like very similar to like when a piece of content gets stuck in a feed, but it's like a relationship you're having. And I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on why you think that shift happened. Like, why did we go when we were finally given the ability to essentially have a digital casino full of potential sexual partners? We like our understanding of that evolved to be even messier and weirder.
Yeah, I think, this might be part of that puritanical swing that is a product of that, millennial hookup culture panic where it's been, culturally perceived as shameful to just have a bunch of hookups or one night stands or whatever. And so people are interested in these on paper, no strings attached types of relationships, but ones where they can also have some kind of, quasi-emotional bond with somebody and, enjoy the intimacy of that experience without dealing with the cultural baggage of it just being a hookup. However, they are also not, we lack the emotional maturity to just call it a relationship. And we are still in this time of putting up these emotional walls to allegedly protect ourselves, but instead it's just nastier and messier than it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm going to quote yourself to yourself again. You wrote, situationship culture is one of mass self-deception. Call it anything else, a romance, an affair. I personally think the casual use of the word affair needs to come back. A relationship, a marriage, a fling, a crush, a torturous entanglement. But God, at least say it with your chest. Do you feel like there's a technological angle there? To me, it almost feels like when you're opening one of these apps and you're finding potential partners and then you get entangled in their lives and you can't really like make up your mind and you have several going at once or whatever, is like the sexual equivalent of like when you open up DoorDash and you can't decide what to eat. It's like this weird like choice anxiety that seems to be exacerbated or almost even gamified by a lot of these platforms like Tinder or Hinge or Bumble or whatever.
Yeah, I think that dating apps especially have become DoorDashified. As a product of that, we are like culturally plagued with an indecisiveness and an inability to commit to something. And, you know, I guess another like digital component of all of this is perhaps by calling it a situationship or something like that, we are like, you know, you would be saved from needing to publicly post your partner on social media and all of that. And, you know, you're presenting like a bit of a digital wall from that. But at the same time, as these three posts that we just read highlight, people are like more than willing to publicly launder the torment of their situationships in a way that I would find quite embarrassing.
I would as well. I don't totally understand the psychology behind it. I sort of classify it as the same thing of like the content economy around screenshotting embarrassing profiles. Now, obviously, we can agree that like some stuff that people are putting on these apps is like insane and like pretty funny. But I feel like a lot of it has stretched out to like a world where people seem to be more proud of non-committal kind of feelings about this stuff, where they're sort of talking about how like they have all these vague relationships that make them miserable. And then there's like an entire dunk economy around like, you know, someone very earnestly being like, this is what I'm looking for on an app or something, and someone screenshots it.
Yeah, it really does not add up to me what the end game is here with the posting.
I saw one the other day where like this woman shared like a sticky note that her friend received from a guy at like a coding boot camp. Have you seen this?
Yes, I have.
I read it. It seemed like very anodyne. The guy was just like, you're really cute. And his line, I thought that was very cute, was like, I would love for you to teach me how to code better, which I thought was like very, you know, very chivalrous. I mean, I'm not a coder, but I imagine that would go hard for some people. And then she put a skull emoji, which I think a lot of people interpreted to mean like, this is bad. And then reading it back, I'm thinking maybe she was sharing it like I'm dying because of how cute it is, but it was very vague. And the replies were unhinged.
Yes. Yes.
And it made me feel like not bad for me because like I'm not in my 20s anymore, but it made me feel bad for like any young person looking at that, thinking that like that's what could happen to you if you like stuck your nose out and like tried to like connect with another person in real life, as they would just put you on blast on the internet.
Right. No, it sucks. That is what people are so afraid of. And yeah, I agree that the note was extremely innocuous. And I think even the polite thing to do, considering, you know, imagine you are a woman at this hackathon thing and you're the only woman. Having a man come up and verbally hit on you might make you uncomfortable. But a note is, you know, take it or leave it.
It's classy. It's he did a little heart on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, we should be encouraging people to shoot their shot politely in public.
But as you pointed out, we've somehow learned to immediately find things like that cringe or creepy. And for more evidence on this, and listener, ride with us here because this will make sense in a moment. I think we should start with your theory of the pervert, which is a topic that we've discussed on previous episodes of this show. You know, perverts are very important for the internet, very important for understanding where culture is at any given moment. And I was hoping that you could break down your unified theory of the pervert for us.
Yeah, I mean, a pervert is, you know, by definition, somebody who sits outside of the boundary of what we consider normal sexual behavior.
Sure.
And of course, there are bad perverts.
Of course.
But then, of course, there's just perverts who are weird. And so basically, the boundary of what is considered normal sexually is always changing. And so to define what that boundary is, I think that it's, we can figure it out by identifying who we see as today's pervert.
And who would you say is what would you say is the defining sort of pervert archetype of the 2020s?
I mean, the defining pervert archetype is like the virgin gooner.
Sure, absolutely, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, okay, this has been a running debate on this show. What would you say is the definition between edging and gooning? What would you say is the difference?
Edging. I think edging is a practice that can take on a variety of forms, and it's really just it's about prolonging the final pleasure point.
Yes.
Gooning, however, is about extending that pleasure for as long as possible, not for like the sake of achieving a final point, but for just like hours of indulgence.
The way I sort of think about it is edging is about prolonging pleasure. Gooning is about prolonging stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
That's accurate. Yeah.
So like, you can edge with one screen, but
Yes.
you goon with many screens surrounding you, like some sort of pornographic panopticon, if you will.
Yeah. You can edge with a partner,
Sure, of course.
in person, acts. Yeah. Gooning, however, specifically requires pornography.
I would agree with that.
So much I could say about the gooner,
I think there's a dimension of loneliness and isolation in there as well.
Yes, of course. Yes.
It is something that sort of implies a sense of filling up a void in your life with sort of digital or media stimuli. And I think that is very much tied to our current moment where it is very hard to see other people beyond the kind of gulf that we've created with technology. So as we move along through this episode, we'll try to figure out when this shift happened and if there's any way out. But I love this theory. So what would you say are the main pervert archetypes of like previous eras?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some decadeology right here. So who would be the king pervert of the 2010s?
That's a really good question. Gosh, I feel like it's easier to identify them in the previous decades. Like the 2010s is a bit of a harder one for me, even though it's like the one I've also, lived in and experienced adulthood in.
So who would you say was the defining pervert of the 2000s?
I would say it was a much more like Girls Gone Wild consumer.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I have a term for this. I've been using straight camp for this. Like my friend has become very obsessed with 2000s live footage of Bloodhound Gang. And he's been bombarding me with these horrible live videos of Bloodhound Gang performing Bad Touch at like various like Latin American music festivals.
I love it.
And it is just like aggressive heterosexuality to the point of absurdity. It's just like pure straight camp. It's obviously toxic. I mean, it becomes much more toxic by the end of the decade, but like it is disgusting and like very heterosexual and like completely impossible by today's standards, even with the right-wing takeover of the country, I think.
Yeah, I think that particular era is so fascinating to me. Like the era of raunch culture and like Spike TV masculinity. Yeah, like especially with something like Bloodhound Gang, it's like it's a bit nasty, and there are very like bad elements to like the whole Girls Gone Wild thing and the exploitative elements.
Sure.
But at the same time, that type of sexuality feels like innocent in comparison, I think, to what we have going on now with the Gooner.
Yes, I would agree. Okay, so before we go to break, would you like to hear my sort of rough approximation of who I think the 2010s pervert is?
Absolutely.
I think it has to have something to do with like polyamory and open relationships.
Yeah.
I think it has to have some sort of like social justice, like the poly predator. Like
the sex pest. He's
the sex. Yeah. There's something there of like juggling multiple kind of relationships in a woke way. Like there's some sort of like it's like a woke pervert.
Yes. I think that's perfect. Yes.
That's what I think it is. Okay. So after the break, we're going to figure out how we got to this world. And we're gonna see if, we can figure out exactly when things all went wrong. And once again, just like last week, please do not goon while you're waiting for us to come back. This is a no gooning show. Our sponsors do not appreciate it. When you were growing up, had online dating really broken through yet? Do you have any sort of early memories of online dating?
I joined Tinder when I turned 18 in 2014, and it was still very new, but it was still culturally, had achieved some sense of cultural dominance. Definitely growing up, I think there was still a really strong stranger danger sense to online dating. But by the time that I was, 18, even like not even, arranging a meeting at a bar first. I mean, it's just not unheard of at all for people to just connect on Tinder and bring it straight to their apartment or whatever. Like,
right.
Growing up would have been something like that is how you die.
That's how you get murdered. Yeah. I the first real relationship of my life, throughout college in my early 20s, started because one day we discovered that we were just friends on Facebook, but we didn't know how. And we then bumped into each other on campus. And it was a weird thing where we assume we got blacked out drunk and added each other on Facebook as we met, but we have no idea ever how it happened. And it was a weird first moment for me where I don't think Facebook had an algorithm just yet, but it was technology was beginning to play matchmaker without me even realizing it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people right now assume that these things were better at some point, that this technology started good. And we wanted to figure out if that was true. And our fantastic researcher, Adam, put together a timeline that doesn't really quite prove that, actually. It turns out that these apps, these platforms for finding love online, were always pretty tied to making money. But let's see how these things evolved. Starting in 1994, we have the Electric Classifieds, Inc., which this is their business plan, okay? So romance, love, sex, marriage, and relationships. ECI has identified a significant opportunity to fulfill these needs more effectively and rapidly using the information superhighway. Oh, that fucking rips. That rips so hard. ECI's approach overcomes limitations of dating services, printed ads, and 900 numbers. Then, in 1995, ECI launches a little website called Match.com. Would you like to see some early screenshots of Match.com?
Yes, I would.
If you scroll all the way down, so there's one. It's called. It's actually, this tagline kind of goes hard. Love at first sight, spelled SITE. And the aesthetic is what I would describe as fourth grade math textbook.
Yes.
With lots of kisses and not vector art, but very geometric patterns and stuff. And Match.com was profiled at the time by Wired, who wrote, cyberlove and chat room couplings. Cyberlove is also sick. I think a lot of this terminology is pretty good, and we should bring some of this back. Cyberlove and chat room couplings are as much a part of online lore as hacker fiends and wild viruses. So connecting and tracking these millions of plugged-in lonely hearts is a prime business opportunity. Enter Electric Classifieds, Inc., one of the first companies to turn internet matchmaking into a profitable full-time enterprise. While reducing the whirlwind of courtship to digital science might not work for everyone, Electric Classifieds' intense focus on a market tailor-made for cyberspace puts it one step ahead of the game. Did you notice what I noticed here, which is that from the very beginning, this is tied to commerce and capital and making money?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course.
It's kind of a bummer, actually, the idea that there was never even a moment where this stuff wasn't a business plan.
Yeah, I mean, how else are they going to justify it and transform it into, non-perverted behavior to try to meet somebody digitally, if not framing it as a smart business decision?
True. And this was also pre.com bust. So I think this was just the AI of its time, which is we're going to make a website and make a lot of money forever.
Yeah.
On Valentine's Day, 1997, Match.com has 500 new users registering a day. By Valentine's Day 1998, the LA Times profiles a cyber love couple. Once again, I think that term is so sick, who met online And it's enough of a novelty that it's a massive story. And they write, foregoing the chemical attraction of pheromones, the couples grew closer to each other, exchanging anonymous email at an internet personals website. And today will marry in Laguna Hills. Call it cyber love at first type.
That's good.
That's really good. That's great.
I like that they are like pheromones the way that everybody else forms a relationship.
Yeah.
Not for them.
You can't smell the internet, thankfully, yet. Later that year, in 1998, we have I would argue, one of the best movies about the internet ever made, which is You've Got Mail. Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. According to people who were working at Match.com at the time, this was the moment when online dating finally stopped being a weird sideshow curiosity, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, that is. A bit. It still strikes me as early. Yeah.
And then the other big moment sort of in the changing of thinking about relationships was, of course, the same year, the first season of Sex and the City. Can you sort of like describe like the shift that's happening here, and particularly in terms of how we think about like women and dating? Because I feel like in the late 90s, this was, I mean, Sex and the City, the early seasons, which are good, I rewatched them recently, they're great, it was a revolutionary concept to like meet people, and that women would be meeting people. It's a very, I think, important shift in this.
Yeah, I mean, God, the early seasons of Sex and the City are so good. Especially, I think, like the pilot is the best episode, where it takes on this like anthropological lens, where you think that you're going to just be like encountering random singles and hearing their stories the whole time. But it was very much this era of women-led casual dating, women loving sex and having sex freely and dating lots of men. But I sort of see the culture of dating that's represented in Sex and the City, I think that is like we can also see in like Seinfeld.
Yes, very similar.
Yeah, very casual. It's very normal to be dating several people at a time, and it's not a crime to have a second date with somebody on Wednesday and have a first date with somebody else on Friday, and everything is very casual and flexible to their benefit and to their detriment.
I think this is also the moment where the internet starts to sort of map out subcultural spaces for dating, and sort of this is the beginning of not just like women sort of being able to express how they would like to date and how they want, to be dated. But one weird dating site that our researcher Adam found was Veggie Date, which launched in the late 90s, 1999, which was specifically for vegetarians. I feel like nowadays Veggie Date would be like a niche fetish site for like VeggieTales fan art. So, simpler time. In 2002, Salon had testimonial stories about online dating. And one I want to highlight was in a music chat room where two people found love over the band Pavement, which is just so adorable. I hope they're having a great time together, hopefully married in Greenpoint. They both have matching thigh tattoos. I think that is an important piece of this, which is that social media and online dating have always had sort of a twin evolution together, because you don't really need a dating app specifically if you don't want one. You can kind of just do what thousands of journalists in New York have done for the last 15 years and treat Twitter like a personal dating ground.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, by 2003, Mark Zuckerberg launches Face Smash. Are you familiar with Face Smash?
No.
Oh, okay. So Face Smash was the prelude to Facebook.
Okay.
And he took Harvard women's photos.
That's right.
Yep.
I saw The Social Network.
Yes. 1 year later, this is actually kind of crazy because I didn't know this. eHarmony is set up, and they patent the first dating site algorithm. And the algorithm reads, they will rank people in 29 categories, including sexual passion, mood engagement, and spirituality. The company will pair two people only when it is 95% confident their compatibility rating falls in the index's top 25%. A dominant individual gets paired with a wallflower only if highly compatible in many other areas.
That's very interesting. I would love to like test that out today. You know what I mean?
The thing that like makes me sad reading about this is that a lot of these sites, at least in their marketing, seem to be much more deliberate about connecting people permanently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there was all kinds of like craven, sort of like messy snake oil shit happening in like the pre and post.com era. But like, I don't know. I wish Tinder had like that level of an algorithm for pairing people together. I don't get the sense they do.
Tinder gave me like their like platinum full access to the app for a story that I was working on. And you can get ultra specific in like selecting your interests. Like today they present just an endless list of keywords that you can associate yourself with, you know, like rollerblading and like geocaching or whatever.
My two favorite things.
Yes.
I love blading over to a new geocache.
Exactly. I don't know really how well the app does in pairing you according to those interests. But I am also pretty sure that there are people today, young people on Match and eHarmony. Sometime this year, eHarmony shared some data with me that like half of their users are like millennial or younger.
Oh, wow.
And
great.
yeah, surprising.
You know, I'm glad people are doing that. I hope they don't regret all the weird, but sometimes, you know, very good casual dating experiences you can get from that stuff.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like something Tinder never had to put up that kind of pretense to what it was offering. And I do think that Match and eHarmony were far more, you know, love and relationship oriented, I think is crucial in their normalization.
I mean, it's nice to hear that people are still using those sites, to be honest, because like I do agree with you that they feel a little more innocent, a little more deliberate than something like Tinder. But to sort of complete the timeline here, because I think this is fascinating, sort of how online dating and social media are so connected, even though we tend not to sort of think of them as the same thing anymore. In 2005, some college students set up a video-based dating site, and they ended up spinning off the video product into something else entirely. Can you guess what that was?
Zoom. I don't know.
YouTube.
Oh.
Yeah. I didn't know that either.
Good for them.
I knew that the first video was an elephant going to the bathroom, but I didn't know that it started as a dating site. So if the social media revolution starts around this time with like YouTube and Facebook and all the rest, so post, let's say 2007, 2008, how would you say dating apps have evolved? Like, because obviously Tinder is the one that everyone kind of knows and talks about, but there are many now, right? And they all sort of offer a different experience.
Right. So you're asking what's the gap between that 2007, 2008 and the total cultural ubiquity of now? Or
yeah, like how do you feel like it's spread? Do you think it was just like Tinder successful, so there's a bunch of spin-offs, or do you think that there's more there?
Tinder came along and really shook things up. And I mean, Bumble is like a direct response to the success of Tinder. The idea of making it a woman-led app it's explicitly a product of the culture that Tinder created. It does continuously seem like Tinder is the foundation for all of these apps, and they differentiate themselves according to like some specific niche or style. Though I think now there's functionally not much difference between Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, and most of them are owned by the same people. Yeah,
so I mean, because in 2009 is when I didn't realize this either. Grindr launched before Tinder. I did not know that.
I'm not surprised that that's where the innovation came from. You know,
honestly, like Grindr is a very well built app. It is a beast of an app. Tinder is kind of badly designed, I would say. But Tinder launches in 2012. And so from essentially 2012 on, we have this explosion of app dating culture that is changing fundamentally the way we meet people. We are sort of always, I think, wrestling with it, even if we're trying to get away from it. Like you said, we're done with Tinder, but we're moving towards identity-based Tinder likes.
Quick question reflecting on that history. Do you think dating apps could have gone away that would have been more interesting? I'm really surprised how many of the early apps were about data and that they could help find the right partner over shared interests, and that's totally gone wayside.
The dating apps themselves did not expect it to be so bad. And I mean, the dating apps are well aware of the decline that they're experiencing, either in, the actual number of people who are using the app or spending money on the app, but also in the cultural perception towards them. I don't think that the apps anticipated that there would be such resentment towards the apps. However, I really can't imagine them having pursued much of a different timeline. The ultimate goal is to make money.
I would also caution against taking them at their word at the time.
Right.
It has been lost to history, but anyone setting up a business with a .com in the 90s was effectively doing the exact same thing as the AI companies now. They were saying that our website will change the world, and then 10 years later they're like, our data will change the world, and then 10 years later they're like, our AI will change. It's the same snake oil every time, and they go for dating first because it's such an intrinsic human value.
Mm-hmm.
They know that they can get us there. So as cute as those things are, they're probably bullshit even at the time. But after going through this whole timeline, do you feel like right now is the worst period for dating, let's say in the modern era? I'm not going to get into what it was like dating in the Middle Ages or something, but did you feel like things are worse now than when, let's say, eHarmony launched 20, 30 years ago?
Honestly, yeah, I do think it is worse for the average person in a lot of ways, especially this moment right now where we're seeing so much animosity between genders. But of course, I think there are various other metrics through which we could look at how dating has been over the last several decades and say, okay, it's not worse. Women having more agency is not a worse thing, of course. But I think that we would also be surprised to see how much sexual freedom and agency and independence and dating satisfaction women had in previous decades compared to today. I would venture to guess that women would have reported being much more satisfied in their casual dating and romantic lives than they do today in the 90s and early 2000s.
Well, right after the break, we're going to talk about how AI is going to fix everything and make it all better. And in the meantime, once again, please do not go into these ads. Do not go into our sponsors. They're going to be so mad. We'll be right back. So you alluded to this in the last section, which that most of these apps are owned by the same people. In December of 2024, the Match Group, which owns Match.com, Hinge, OkCupid, and Tinder, announced that they had a big plan for fixing the online dating landscape. From CNN, Justin McLeod, CEO of Hinge, outlined how the company intends to fully embrace AI. While AI is not going to be the panacea when it comes to the very deeply impersonal problem of love, I can tell you that it is going to transform the dating app experience, taking it from a do-it-yourself platform to an expertly guided journey that leads to far better outcomes and much better value to our daters, he told investors. So, this sounds fine, right? This sounds like totally, they got it, right? All done.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's problem solved.
In all seriousness, do you think there is any sort of useful role for AI in something like this? Can you imagine one?
I can imagine it working for some people in the way that dating apps have worked for plenty of people. However, I'm really of the mind that our current dating woes are a product of technological mediation, that anything that allows for further technological mediation into our romantic lives couldn't be the solution.
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable by the idea of an AI as an intermediary. I kind of came across this idea a couple years ago when I first started covering the rise of generative AI, where people were talking about how they're having an AI write an email. And a lot of people were saying that they're having AI read emails, which sort of creates this world where it's effectively two AIs communicating instead of the human beings, which is what seems to be what a lot of people are using AI for now. So, you can have an AI pick your photo, and you can have an AI make suggestions about how to increase your profile. Bumble already has this. You can have an AI remind you to talk to someone or help you communicate your first message. And I can't imagine there won't be a moment where you can have an AI receive messages for you and answer people. And it just feels like it makes me just want to be like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, what is the point of any of this?
The only way for an AI matchmaking model to appropriately match people is if we all like know ourselves well enough to tell, an AI model what it is we're looking for or reflect that information to it in some way. But at the same time, these AI models do not allow for us to know anything about ourselves at all. If we're not the ones reading our messages, we're not the ones shaping our profiles and putting the thought into it and thinking about what it is we want, then what sort of feedback are we even able to give these AI programs to tell it what we want? It's kind of, I'm sure they're going to find a way to keep it going, but it does not seem like it will lend to us knowing ourselves any better. And I think that is part of today's problem, is that a lot of us have no fucking idea what we want.
Well, luckily, there is now this. I just dropped in the chat. This is an AI wingman that our producer Grant found. Can you have a little scroll on this page and talk through it for our listeners? Because this is grim shit. This is real grim shit.
Yeah, it appears that this AI dating assistant will help you hit on women better. It says it'll eliminate small talk. That's a red flag. Anybody who says they hate small talk, it's so bad for you that you have to pay
I only
want
to be talking to women about various wins and fails we've had professionally and how to grind and hustle more. I want to grussle. I want to be grussling with all of my potential partners. No, small talk is how you flirt. That's the secret.
Yeah. It has an extremely long list of FAQs on the front page here, like, will Wing use corny pickup lines? Also, one of the FAQs is, what is Riz?
It's that fat little boy from TikTok.
They're doing some kind of like Google search arbitrage here or whatever, where like somehow if you search Riz app, this will come up. I sort of have a feeling that this app is in part created by somebody that I once went on Tamron Hall, the Tamron Hall show, to talk about.
Oh, sure.
All of this stuff, and he was pitching an AI wingman. So I do wonder if it's the same thing. Other than that, if not, Wing has some competition,
right?
So yeah.
But while we're sort of talking about like the AI effect here, I want to go back to the gooner, the archetype of our time, right? The king pervert that we're all kind of becoming, because I do think AI slots in quite well there to sort of the loneliness. You know, the story the New York Times recently had of the woman who fell in love with her ChatGPT model, or there's a woman who like recently married like a virtual husband back in 2023. And these are not new stories. Like, for instance, there was like every 6 months or so during the 2010s, there was like a different story about like usually a guy in Japan that would like marry a Nintendo DS character or marry a hologram or whatever. Actually, the hologram one was quite sad because the technology that powered the Hatsune Miku hologram was depreciated, and like that dude did lose his hologram, which I think is kind of sad. But
it's sad.
It is sad. Like, that guy's like a true romantic, gooner or not. But like, I do think these stories have always been around, and going all the way back, like there are people who were marrying cartoon characters in the 70s, like, you know, at the beginning of the furry movement. But I do think that there is a rise of people who are probably not telling other people how intimate they are getting, not just with other people via AI, but with AI tools themselves to sort of exacerbate that digital loneliness.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And if I have to, envision the next step of the Gooner, it is going to be a far more...
I was taking a sip of water and almost completely destroyed my microphone right there. Yeah. Imagine, if you will, the Gooner.
Yeah. The future Gooner is going to be one that is far more, AI mediated and really fetishizes the abject loneliness of the whole phenomenon. That, I think, is a part of like a really critical component of today's Gooner pervert, is that it's kind of like it's fetishizing porn addiction and sort of it sort of feels like a snake eating itself type of thing, where it's gotten to the point where like the only thing that brings these people excitement is like the pathetic degeneracy of it all. And I think that in the future there's going to be more gooners who, are conscious of the false relationship that they have with these like AI pornographic characters. But the patheticness of it all is precisely what they like about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've talked about this on a previous episode where the line in the sand for me in terms of like millennial and Gen Z sexuality kind of was first apparent when I saw the word simp used for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like simping as a concept is so outrageous there have always been men who get parasocial relationships with, porn stars or celebrities or whatever, and then start to hate themselves because of it. That's a thing. The fappening was 15 years ago. Like, we know that there's sort of this rage that can build from lusting after powerful or influential women. But the psychology of simping to me, I was just like, oh, this is different and this is fucked up and weird. And like, and I feel like everything after that has just been going down that same path of, I think you're right. The idea that like, the isolation and the degradation and the embarrassment you feel is part of the fetish. And then it's all aided and abetted by technology that's monetizing it and sort of making you sort of live in it. It's a really weird, like, cyborg sexuality that bothers me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is precisely the theory I'm running with, that, we're living in a time where sexuality is, entirely technologically mediated in a way that makes us far less human and far more cyborg than before.
I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that dating is worse than ever and likely to get worse. So, real quick before we finish the show, how do we fix this? Just like real quick, like, what do you got?
What quick. I don't want to do a touch grass recommendation, but there's a little bit of what I have to offer you guys is if the AI problem is really going to get as bad as it seems that it could, where the internet really does just become various AI models talking to each other, and we have to question, whether what we're seeing online is from a real person or not. I think it's going to lose a bit of its shine for the average person. I'm really not interested in having to question all of the time if like the image I'm looking at is real or AI generated.
Well, you've gone on record as saying that like you can't get as horned up from deep fake nudes as you can real ones.
I can certainly envision like a near future where it's harder to tell the difference. But at the same time, the appeal of a woman that is a real person sending you a photo of herself naked that you would assume she just took that picture rather than using an AI model to generate that. Like, that has an erotic appeal that is far higher than choosing a random woman online and putting her image through an AI model to get pornographic images of her.
Friend of the show, David Sims, on his podcast, Blank Check, they recently had a conversation about whether or not CGI could be scary. Like, can you think of an example of a CGI monster that's scarier than a practical one, or one you never see at all? And I think about that a lot when I think about AI and comedy and AI and sexual desire, which is that there's something about imprinting like a human sense of humor through a lens or through a camera, a human sense of comedy. The AI doesn't have that. Like, it can't create an image based on its own desire unless we can build like genitals for it, which like that just seems cruel. Like, I don't want mine. I wouldn't give it to a robot. But like, until it can feel desire and understand how to communicate that, I don't actually think deepfake porn can ever get you as horned up as the real thing. I don't think it's possible.
No, I completely agree with you. Again, there's always going to be perverts who figure that out for themselves, but they are not going to speak to the broader sense of sexuality. Getting back to like the solution of it all, I think that like people are going to like just grow a little bit more tired of being online. I mean, I look out my window in front of me and I'm not questioning whether that's AI or not. The only thing really to do is to be, a bit more conscious of our relationship with technology and whether a phone addiction is benefiting us at all. It's not a straightforward just put your phone down, but that's a little bit of a start.
On the touch grass of it all, but in a place where like everyone feels extremely awkward if somebody's approached in public. Do you see like a bar scene coming back? Do you envision that we're going to recreate a social space where Drake's version of the club again, where like it is appropriate to talk to strangers?
I mean, I think that there is a lot of like people are really romanticizing that idea, especially the club. Like I've been seeing so much of that like, this is what I thought the club would be like when I got old enough to go to them. But all of that is like part of why another one of my like my pet interest, in addition to like people not having sex, is like I kind of think it's a problem for our culture to like really pursue this like mass sober curious thing, because I frankly think that like going to the bar and meeting people and like having a couple of drinks is good for you, for most people. Obviously not everybody. It's hard to say that is going to come back because like the interest in that kind of culture is coinciding so strongly with this like sober curious movement.
So I will say, because I feel the same way about sober curious stuff, which I think is that it's like you're fine. Like don't make a thing about it. But I was talking to a real estate agent recently who was saying that like one of the major trends in real estate post-COVID is the return of the American dining room, which was essentially extinct by the 2010s. And there is a huge interest now in kind of dinner parties or entertaining that way.
Yeah.
And I do think that could be the solution to the sort of sober, curious, I don't want to go to a bar or a club to meet someone, which is that we used to just have more social institutions. Like people forget that like a lot of couples used to meet in church.
Right.
I mean, I was raised Catholic and that place is horny as hell, Catholic church, like that's where you would meet people. And I think that like we're slowly having to build back different kinds of social institutions that don't involve alcohol to meet other people.
Absolutely. And, even just like meeting through friends has fallen dramatically. Like that should be a pretty like simple thing to like, you don't have to, there's no weird like sexual politics about like meeting in the workplace or something. Like meeting through friends is normal and can be done through like these non-alcohol focused activities or whatever. But yeah, I mean, maybe like, maybe that's what all those pickleball courts are for. Like,
I think that is what they're for. Also, like, I mean, I feel like the answer is just like go fuck outside. Like, just like hang out with anyone outside. Like, just do that. You'll meet somebody.
So not go fuck outside. Your advice was not to start just to...
Honestly, go fuck outside. If you, as long as you're not like putting in somebody's face, like if that's what you're into, but like do anything outside. Just like get outside and you'll feel sexy.
I completely agree.
That's all it is.
Who do you think AI is for? Do you think the all the influencers posting crying videos about how hard it is to date are excited about the idea of AI helping out?
It's aimed at helping the companies who stand to make money off of it. It strikes me as just like so fundamentally anti-human that I can't imagine it genuinely helping a broad swath of people in the long term.
I can give one positive AI dating experience based on my own life, actually. Okay. And I think that this kind of it's like very much baby with the bathwater with this stuff so I was in a long-term relationship with a woman who her first language was Portuguese. We were living in Brazil on and off for the last couple of years. Google Translate sucks ass. It has always sucked ass. I learned Portuguese to a point, but my Portuguese is still something you would learn as an adult. ChatGPT launches night and day level able to talk to each other, because even where she can speak English and I can speak Portuguese, there's still stuff that's going to fall in the middle and you just can't get it. And we even got to a point where like we were having the AI sort of like explain on a meta level sometimes to each other stuff. And it wasn't all the time, but I have to imagine there are a lot of couples or a lot of people that are using translation services from AI tools that is having a profound effect on how they communicate. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I do think that's a positive. And I think that I can imagine, somebody who struggles with social interactions, like finding some guidance in all of this. But I think by and large, AI can be used as a tool for people who do know themselves well enough to use it as a tool and not, not a crutch per se. But that isn't a lot of people.
Yes. Yeah. Just me.
Yeah, just you.
Maybe you too.
When I was looking at the sites of we'll cut down the small talk and screen out the matches, and it's going to be AI bots talking to AI bots to set up a date to make it efficient. It just struck me. Dating should be high stakes. It's for something important in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it should be high stakes. I think it should be the opposite.
Yeah, no. Right.
That's where the small talk comes in. I think dating is made of the small stuff.
Nervous approaching a person because you're hoping that they like you, and it should be exciting. You should be...
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's not something to make efficient. It's something to be oh, look at this profile. Look at this person here. You should feel, it should cause feeling. People back when they would go to bars, it would be you go out night in and again trying to find somebody who's special. You'd
go to Skinny Dennis in Williamsburg. You'd wait till 2 a.m. You'd order yourself a big bourbon and a sweet tea. And then you try to make bleary eyes at the other person who has the bleary eyes that you have. Yes. And then you go home together. Or you make out on a pile of garbage outside, perhaps. I can't speak to any other person.
And that's the only way you get to feel anything that isn't just dread. And that's important.
Yeah, no, I think that it is absolutely something that people should be treating with, complete intentionality. But there is also absolutely a place for levity in all of it. It is a high stakes matter that you should be treating with intentionality. However, you should pursue it with the most low stakes levity that you are capable of obtaining in your personality.
Would you say that perhaps all we need is love? Is that accurate?
That was delete the episode and just put that
in. Would you say that that's okay?
The internetification of all of this has made it a desperate to-do list and a list of demands. When you look at the people who are very upset about it, it's taking all the fun out of it and also taking all of the serious.
Yeah.
It's promoted algorithmic thinking about partnership instead of being I don't know, there's just something about this person and now I feel excited.
A roller coaster is only fun because it goes up and then it goes down.
Yeah.
You can't just have a flat roller coaster. It's not fun. Yeah. That's what dating is.
Well, and that is, I think, the biggest crime that we can charge against the dating apps is that nobody is having fun anymore. Right. And it, as serious of a matter as love is, you should be having fun.
When we're talking about AI and sexuality, I think the most important thing to remember comes from a song by the band The Bloodhound Gang, which is You and Me, Baby, Ain't Nothing But Mammals, so let's do it like they do it on the Discovery Channel. Magdalene, thank you for coming on. This has been a wonderful episode. Where can people follow you if they want to read your work, look at your posts, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, yeah, sorry to say you should put your phone down, but actually pick it back up.
Right.
And
right.
I am on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it, at Magda J. Taylor, Instagram as well. But I also write a Substack newsletter called Many Such Cases, and you can find that. Thank you.
Highly recommend.
You can find that at magdalene.substack.com.
Panic World is a Garbage Day production. Subscribe to the newsletter at garbageday.email. Panic World is written and produced by Grant Irving. It's hosted by me, Ryan Broderick. Our amazing researcher is Adam Bumas. It's engineered by Rebecca Seidel. Our deranged logo was created by Gabby Cash. Please give us $5 at patreon.com/panicworld. Please give us products to sell by contacting Multitude at multitude.production/ads. For any other way you would like to give us money or work with us or promote us or become financially entangled with us, you can reach out to our fixer, our wonderful bag man, Josh Fjelstad, and you can reach him at panicworldpod@gmail.com. And one piece of advice from me to you: chill out, touch grass while you still can.